Welcome everyone to a new episode of my comprehensive NFL player review series, Studs and Duds. If this is your first time catching Studs and Duds, this is actually my longest standing series, going back to when this channel first began as a Madden channel, where I use my ratings changes for my own custom Madden roster to discuss the rising and falling players around the NFL. And to this day, this system hasn't changed for me, as it's a great way to hit on how all of these players are performing on the field, for better or worse. So please, sit down, buckle up, and enjoy, as we've got a lot of players to talk about here today. We have the NFC North here today, one of the better divisions, if not the best divisions in the NFL, so this should be a really fun one. If you guys enjoy Studs and Duds, enjoy this video, please, if you could, take just a second to hit that like button down below. It's a free, quick, easy thing that really does help me out, help support this channel. But without further ado, let's get started, beginning with the Chicago Bears. And for their midseason Super Stud Award, none other than right tackle Darnell Wright, getting a +4 in the ratings here at the midseason, 79 to an 83. He has really been unlocked as Ben Johnson's version of Penei Sewell. I'm not going to say he's Penei Sewell, at least not quite yet, but they've weaponized him in the run game especially. He's settled in as a very firm pass protector as well, but it really is the run blocking that stands out to me on Darnell Wright. And I have a little stat that kind of backs up just how effective he's been. Obviously, it's a team sport and all that, but I think Darnell Wright is a big part of this, and the film tells that as well. The Chicago Bears have ran almost double the amount of runs to the right side of the field as they have to the left, 125 rushing attempts to the right versus 74 to the left. But even with that increased volume, they're at a 52% success rate running to the right this year, down to 39% running to the left. Still pretty good in both categories, but over half of their runs have been considered successful runs by that metric this year, and definitely Darnell Wright, a huge part of that, quite literally. And it's really fun to see this development as well, because coming out of college, coming out of Tennessee, I remember Darnell Wright had so many highlight blocks where you were like, man, it is in there for him to be a superstar run blocker at the next level. But for every highlight block, it felt like there were honestly 8 times he would either let a guy cross his face or get caught leaning and miss on a block, struggle to kind of sustain blocks. He's really improved his approach as a run blocker, and he's bringing the tenacity on top of his crazy athleticism and play strength. So he's really turning into one of the better overall tackles in the entire game, but certainly one of the best right tackles in the league. He's got a great last name for that. But a pretty easy choice to highlight him. But let's continue talking about some of the offensive players for the Bears. Caleb Williams going to get a +1 here, 74 to a 75, and Bears fans will say, that's not enough. Well, recency bias is very convenient as of the release of this video, because he is coming off of really by far his best game of the season against the Cincinnati Bengals, where he shows off exactly what we're hoping to see from Caleb Williams, right? And I will start with the good there. Obviously, he is going up here, even if it's not as much as Bears fans might be hoping for coming off the heels of that performance. But dude, I know there was so much discussion. I even made a video about it, about is Caleb Williams a generational prospect and all that? Well, I do think he has generational tools. And the athleticism combined with the arm talent has been on full display all season, but he was able to hone it in and put it to work and lead to production against the Bengals defense just this last week. But man, his ability to get out of sacks, to outrun uber athletic edge defenders to the perimeter, even some of these scrambles where he's juking guys out of his shoes, spinning out of tackles, and then just the velocity he's able to get when he whips the ball on the run. I'm not afraid to say he does have generational tools for the quarterback position. It's really about the mental side of things, and making the right reads, of course, and as well, honing in that arm to hit the ball accurately. That's been a huge problem for him this season, which in that Bengals game, I don't recall really a bad throw in that game, which is probably the first time this season that's happened. It might be a slight exaggeration. I would have to pull up the metrics on it, but it really felt that way watching that Bengals game. But yeah, there's if we did this before the Bengals game, I think it would just be a neutral on Caleb, where it's been a very up and down season where you have seen a lot of those flashes, but so many missed throws, so many times as well where he's not playing in structure. He does lead the league in time to throw. I do think is still leaning too much into that incredible athletic ability he has and trying to win with scramble drill, whereas you want to see him just throw the ball with anticipation, hit those trust throws, whether it's over the middle of the field or a back shoulder comeback or whatever it might be. Playing within the timing and the rhythm of the offense is something he's going to have to continue to get better at. Good to see a performance like this against the Bengals. I do think overall Caleb has been just ever so slightly better than he was in his rookie year. I don't think the development has been quite what you might have hoped for, but at least it's going in the right direction, and hopefully it can continue that way. But then at running back, DeAndre Swift is going to get a +2, 77 to a 79. I'm hard on DeAndre Swift, and I do think when you see the Bears try to run between the tackles, you still see a lot of those frustrations with his vision, either not trusting a hole or bouncing a run outside, leaving a lot of meat on the bones of so many well-blocked runs in this offense. But Ben Johnson has fully utilized DeAndre Swift for what he is good at. When they have run tosses and outside zone with DeAndre Swift, his efficiency is off the freaking charts. I think I broke down the numbers in our latest weekly game recap episode before we started Studs and Duds, but I think that with DeAndre Swift, between the tackles, they were in the threes for yards per attempt, but outside the tackle on toss and outside zone, I think it was at like 9 yards an attempt or something. Like, he has shown all of that athletic ability, the explosive playability, and he's running hard. I'll give him that. Even if the vision is still a serious frustration, and our next player, I think, is going to begin to take a lot of carries away from DeAndre Swift, he still deserves credit for running efficiently within the run schemes that they're leaning into him with. But then we've got Kyle Monungai, the other running back, the rookie 7th-round pick, looking like another steal of a 7th-round pick out of Rutgers. I've been hard on the Bears for not taking Cam Skattebo, but at least they're using Kyle Monungai now, and he's kind of a poor man's Cam Skattebo, frankly. Runs so hard, like Cam Skattebo as well. He's got good vision, but he's got much better agility than you typically expect from bruising-style runners, so it's not just about running through guys. It's about those subtle jab steps before the point of attack where you're able to make it so defenders aren't hitting all of you. Quick feet help you do that, and he has that. He had a monster day against the Bengals, and hopefully DeAndre Swift can get healthy, because I do see a very poor man's version of the Thunder and Lightning approach of what Ben Johnson had in Detroit now. Obviously with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyle Monungai and DeAndre Swift, at least schematically speaking, and running behind maybe a poor man's version of Penei Sewell and Darnell Wright. That's more just because, as we'll talk about Penei Sewell later, he's one of the best players in football. It's not a diss on Darnell Wright. But they clearly are able to tap into a lot of the same stuff that worked with Ben Johnson in Detroit. But let's talk about some of these pass catchers. So DJ Moore is going to kind of continue to fall down after last year. There was a little bit of this in this series, and I think it's a continuation of this. I don't think the separation from him has been amazing. The just dynamism from him that we saw a couple years ago in that first year when they acquired him for Bryce Young, it was like, man, DJ Moore is kind of showing like shades of Jamar Chase back in that 2023 season where he was one of the best receivers in football. It's just not the case anymore. It's not that there's a bunch of drops or that he's not winning contested catches or that he's not a useful receiver or anything like that. It's just, you watch him, you watch the Bears, and he's just not at the mark that he had earned in that 2023 campaign. So it's really just continued to come down from there. He's feeling more like a low-end 1, high-end 2 type of guy as opposed to a true number 1 like we felt he was coming out of that 1 year. But I am going to give Rome Odunze some love. He gets a +2, 77 to a 79. I think he just looks the part in watching the Bears. Some of the numbers on him are good, but maybe not quite like the major leap you were hoping Odunze would take this year. And obviously this week they just kind of like decided not to use him, I guess, against the Bengals, where he had just 2 targets in a game where the Bears scored 47 points. Definitely a weird performance, but yeah, like he's on pace for just over 1,000 yards. He's looked good. He deserves his praise. I think there's an element of this where it's like you were expecting an even larger leap from him in year 2 from the top 10 pick, but I do think the route running has continued to get better. I think his separation has looked better to me than it did in his rookie year. And some of the run after catch he's bringing has been really nice too. The contested catch win percentage is at just 35% this year. He's also had a couple drops, 3 drops on the season. So some of the ball skills have been uncharacteristic for him. If he can kind of return to that being the prominent element of his game on top of some of the other good stuff that he's showing on film, I think I think he can get closer to where he was hyped up to be, if that makes sense. And to be fair, he did have a really nice touchdown, one of his better plays of the season, called back for a silly little illegal procedure before the snap against the Commanders. So it's in there. The tape looks good. +2 for Adunze. But then Colston Loveland. It's a good thing we waited till after that Bengals game because he got to get let loose in this one last week. But he has looked good when they have targeted him this year. He was injured to start the year, and then obviously he's kind of like in a rotational role with Cole Kmet there and all these other guys. But Kmet's been a little bit banged up lately. They've almost been forced to lean into Colston Loveland more, and man, he looks good, man. The separation in the middle of the field, he's really a tough cover. He's been getting open on crossing routes, and just the ease at the catch point, the smooth transitions after the catch. We've seen it throughout the season, but he gets the big touchdown, the game winner against the Bengals, where he's like spinning in and out of tackles. That's good to see too. I mean, frankly, having watched all of his targets at Michigan, my biggest, I guess, negative or lack of a redeeming trait on Loveland was I didn't love what he did after the catch at Michigan. I didn't see a ton of toughness and instincts, whereas I knew there was a lot of potential there. It's really encouraging to see that because I think run after catch is probably the most underrated trait for a tight end, given the areas that they catch the football, and they have so many opportunities to make smaller defenders miss. So that's awesome to see. I got my jab shots in at Ryan Poles for taking Tyler Warren in over Colston Loveland. It's a fun reminder to just be patient with this type of stuff. And, I think there's definitely a world where both of these guys landed in the right spot for their skill sets. And Loveland deserves some praise for his blocking as well. He's been on the wing in 12 personnel quite a bit and blocking as a slot wide receiver on screens and stuff. So it's, he was a little bit of a slender frame coming out, but he did block his ass off at Michigan. And, I've continued to say a lot of people said with him as a prospect that he's going to be a receiving only tight end. I really did like his blocking tape. I just wanted to see him bulk up a little bit more, not a lot, a bit more to lose athleticism. But if he could get up to 255, I mean, I really think he could be, I don't want to say Gronk because Gronk is Gronk, but the same idea where he could actually be a legitimate high-end blocker and a high-end impact as a receiving threat, which would obviously be well worth that top 10 pick. So a lot of time on Loveland there. I think he's checked a lot of boxes this year, and it's good to see his usage come up. And if I didn't say it before, it's +3 on Loveland, 72 to a 75. Basically as much as I could give him, given his small sample size so far. But hopefully when we do this at the end of the season, we see a skyrocket in the rating there. Now, let's talk about the offensive line a little bit more. We obviously talked about Darnell Wright earlier. But Theo Beneday, the year 2 undrafted Canadian Football League prospect, was not in the roster previously, had to create him at a 68 overall mark. Now, the pass protection on him is just not good. There's really no way around it. He's been someone that opposing rushers have been able to get through and get to Caleb by way of Theo Beneday. But the run blocking on him, it's the reason that Ben Johnson is starting him. I mean, Ben Johnson comes from that kneecap-biting Detroit culture, and he sees that in Theo Beneday. And there's a clip against the Bengals where it's like the blindside scene where Michael Orr blocks the guy through the cheerleaders and into the bleachers. Beneday did that against a Bengals defender this week, but he's been grading out really well as a run blocker. And like I said earlier, they're having a crazy amount of success running to the right behind Darnell Wright, but their success rate is still at 39% running to the left with Theo Beneday out there. That's still quite good. So, he's found his role in this offense. I don't know if he's going to continue to edge out the second round pick, Ozzie Trapillo, has a lot better like pass protection technique, I think, based on what we saw coming out of Boston College. There is also the whole Braxton Jones of it all, where he's been a quality tackle for them, but he's been benched here. Ben Johnson clearly not a fan of him. Honestly, a little surprised he wasn't brought up as a trade target for some teams there. Braxton Jones just feels like from the second Ben Johnson got here, they've been wanting to get rid of him. So just a little footnote there. But yeah, Theo Benedet getting some love. And then Drew Dahlman, the big free agent signing at center for this team. I got to admit, man, I didn't think it was a bad signing by any stretch of the imagination. I thought it was just a solid signing. This has been a slam dunk signing and a home run fit, to use a couple cross sport parallels there. But yeah, man, he's had his best years as a pass protector, so I think he's continued to show gains in that regard. That's the core area that I think has left a lot to be desired in Drew Dahlman's tape, going back to Atlanta. But he's allowed just 12 pressures on the season and 0 pressures in the last 3 games. Now, it is worth noting here, as we discussed, Drew Dahlman, the last 4 weeks where he's been playing so much better, even the last 6 weeks, frankly, the opponents for the Bears and the D-lines he's faced. So starting week 3, Dallas, Las Vegas, Washington, New Orleans, Baltimore, without Madubuike, and Cincinnati. I mean, those are probably 6 of the 10 worst interior D-lines in the league. So I don't think he's like fully through the woods yet. Obviously, the tape's been really good. We're giving him a +2 here, 77 to a 79. But like I said, the pass blocking has been much better. After the first couple weeks, this new unit, melding together. They missed some stunts and stuff, but they've cleaned that stuff up much better, I think, in recent weeks. But as a run blocker, too, like, they've run a lot of wide zone here. He's been as good of a wide zone blocker as you could have expected. He was one of the best coming out of Atlanta and over here to Chicago. But he's been good in all the other stuff that they've been doing as well, in my opinion. So he's checked a lot of boxes. He gets a +2 here and could certainly get up into the 80s for the next version of Studs and Duds and really be viewed as one of the best centers in the entire NFL. But I do think you have to look at who he's going against as well. It's not to take away from the fact that he's beating up on lesser interior lines, but if you're going to be one of the best centers in the league, you want to repeat something close to this against much better competition. So it's just something to keep an eye on with him heading into the second half of the year. But that's going to do it for the offense. Let's talk about some of the defenders on the Bears. So Austin Booker, the young Austin Booker, he got to make his season debut against the Bengals and totally popped, man. He dominates Orlando Brown on a bull rush, sticks him on his ass, and gets a sack. I mean, it's one of the better pass rush reps we'll see on the season there from Austin Booker. A truly impressive effort, and that's just really good to see, man. Some of that speed to power. He looks a little bigger than he did certainly coming out of Kansas. He had a very slender frame, so that's good to see, and it's obviously good to see that translate to some power. I'm just excited to see more from him, man. A guy that when he went in the 5th round, I was like, really? I mean, he has so much good tape of utilizing a bunch of different pass rush moves. He didn't test particularly well. He ran slower than you expected, but the quickness, the agility, the change of direction was always there on tape. I thought that got overthought. And you can't understate how badly the Bears need someone else on the edge to step up for them. Their efficiency from all these other non-Montez Sweat edge rushers has been so brutal. So if this is the beginning of something for Austin Booker, and it's just a +1 here, 68 to a 69, after just 31 pass rush snaps in his season debut. But if he can be a legit impact player for them in the second half of the year, breaking out at age 23 here, that would honestly go a long way towards the Bears being a playoff team. I don't think it's dramatic to say that. I think that could go so far towards helping this defense be more reliable and consistent. But a couple of these D linemen are going to come down, one of them being one of those edge rushers that has disappointed, Dayo Odeyingbo. It looked promising right out the gate, but he has been extremely quiet for this Bears team. Just 10 pressures on 207 pass rush snaps this season. That's, a 5% pressure rate. That's as low as it gets in the NFL. And if you take away week 1, it's even lower than that because he had 3 of his 10 pressures came week 1 against Minnesota. He also hasn't been great against the run. It's been brutal, man. Now, I will say this, it's just a -1 for Odiengbo, 76 to a 75. They're not rushing him off the inside as much as I think they should be. That's always been where he's been able to win as a pass rusher. Like going back to Indianapolis, almost all of his effective wins were lining up as a 3 technique, beating a guard in a true pass rush situation. They've been leaning on him as much more of a true defensive end edge type. I'm curious if Austin Booker and they acquired somebody as well. Forgive me, I can't remember who they picked up. And of course, Our Lads is down while I'm recording this. But I wonder if with the flashes of Austin Booker, bringing another veteran in there, if the goal would be to slide Odiengbo in more consistently on third downs, where that's where he's earned his rating and earned his contract from. So we'll see if the Bears can make that type of adjustment here in the second half and get better. Grady Jarrett also going to come down, -1, 77 to a 76. It's just age regression here. We don't need to spend too much time on it. That was the one signing especially that I was like, that's way too much money for Grady Jarrett. I mean, one of the worst defensive lines in the league released him outright, and he just hasn't been playing well before this year. Now he's 33 years old, or 32 going on 33 years old. He's been banged up as well on top of this, so I don't want to harp on him too much, but he just hasn't been really an impact for them at all. But one interior D lineman is going to get some praise. Gervon Dexter really passes the eye test to me every week. It feels like he's getting 2 or 3 impactful pressures. He's good at getting off blocks in the run game. There's definitely those reps where his pad level at, he's 6'5", going on 6'6". He can get driven back in the wrong spot against the run. So he's not perfect, but he's really developed nicely as a number 2 option for this team. He's improved that get off, which was a problem coming out of Florida. He's rushed with power. He's had some cross-facing finesse style moves to get after the QB as well. So it's a +2 for Dexter, up to a 79. And then we go to the second level with the linebackers. Tremaine Edmunds has really stood out to me this season in a way that he hasn't in years past. And it's not crazy to think that Edmunds, now just 27 years old, already in his 8th season in the NFL. He was that young coming into the league. He's 27 and a half years old. He turned 20 during his rookie season. Just crazy. But it's not crazy to imagine that he is really developing still in this a season of his, especially in a Dennis Allen defense where he's able to be their version of Demario Davis. That same idea, 6'5", 250-pound uber athletic linebacker that does a little bit of everything. He's blitzing at a higher rate than he has really throughout his career, but he's flying to the sideline. He's got the best missed tackle rate he's had in his entire career at 7.3%. He's got 4 interceptions and a pass breakup on top of it. I mean, he's been, I would say, at a Pro Bowl level this season. And, I've been hard on Tremaine Edmunds over the years. I think his processing and some of the missed tackles over the years have been a point of frustration for him, but not this year, man. Ton of love going his way as he gets +3, up into the 80s now, 81 for Tremaine Edmunds. And then Noah Sewell as well. Polarizing player. He's a see-ball, hit-ball linebacker right now. He's got a crazy high missed tackle rate at 23%. And that was an issue for him at Oregon as well. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to get cleaned up. But you see the energy making an impact in the run game. Oftentimes, even if he's not making the tackle or if he is getting a missed tackle, he's slowing down the running back in the backfield. He's blowing up a block, trying to dive at a guy's ankles, just the effort plays. He's got a lot of play strength to get through blocks as well. So he's as a strong side LB3 in pretty much, a similar role to what Zach Bond did for them and Ellis before that in this system. He's got a role. He's getting a +2 up to a 70 as a role player. And then we got some guys in the secondary to talk about here. So Tyreek Stevenson, it's been a roller coaster career for him, frankly, and a roller coaster season. It has not all been good, but the coverage hasn't been horrible. He's been a physical tackler. He's settled in this Dennis Allen defense as a decent player, and he's trending back in the right direction. I don't have absurd praise to have on him because I do still think he's a beatable corner. And hasn't been quite as good as I thought he would be coming out. But it does feel like a better system fit, and he's heading in the right direction. And then the other corner that's had to step in with the injury to Jalen Johnson, Nahshon Wright, again, he has been extremely beatable. It's just a +2, 67 to a 69. Most of his games, he's kind of been burnt toast, so I don't want to oversell this, but there have been some really good plays on the ball. The interception against Spencer Rattler especially just shows the ability to read the QB's eyes. And he's got 3 picks on the year, so when he happens to be in the right area, 6 pass breakups on the season, he's shown off some good ball skills, which was something he had coming out of Oregon State in that off-zone style system that they played way back when. He was a 3rd-round pick in 2021, so he's not nothing. He's doubled his career playing time this year here in Chicago, and he's shown that maybe he could be a decent backup corner. And then the only other player to talk about here, I do have a footnote on Kevin Byard. If we did this after week 4, I would have tanked Byard's rating. He, especially to start the season, looked cooked. Both in the run game where he couldn't seem to get into position, they gave up a bunch of big plays, and through the air, but he's really settled in, maybe making some adjustments with where he's at with his athleticism at his age, knowing that he has to be more conservative with his angles, be a little bit more cautious as a defender, whatever it might be. He's settled in the last month. So no ratings change for Byard. I still have him with a pretty respectable rating, like high 70s, I think. But he's salvaged himself from dropping with some big plays in the last few weeks. So that's all we've got on the Bears. Before we go to the Lions here, I want to thank the sponsor for today's video, SeatGeek. You guys, SeatGeek is the #1 ticketing app out there, and for good reason. They simply offer the best tickets at the best price. I'm always keeping my eyes peeled for a good deal when I'm looking to go to a ball game. I always find myself back at SeatGeek. They have the best user interface. They color code all of the seats, so all you have to do is look for those green dots. You know you're getting the most bang for your buck, not just on the SeatGeek app, but again, market competitive prices as well. They'll put images of what those exact seats for just about every stadium. They have real, IRL images taken of what those exact seats are going to look like, so you know what your view is going to look like. I love that. You'll get the tickets right there in your app. You don't have to jump through email chains and third parties and have this stressful experience tracking down your tickets as you approach the gate. They make everything easy at the best price. They're the best ticketing app on the market for good reason. I'm happy to partner with them. So if you're heading to a ball game this NFL season, you're going to a basketball game, hockey game, concert, whatever it might be this winter, do it on SeatGeek. And when you do, use code TFG10 and you'll save up to $20 on your first purchase as well. So that's code TFG10 at SeatGeek, and have a great time wherever you are headed. All right, let's go to the Detroit Lions, and for their super stud midseason award, linebacker Jack Campbell, really breaking through as one of the better linebackers in the NFL, in my opinion. Like, really stopping short of some of those super freaks, Fred Warner. Roquan Smith has bounced back this year. Zach Bond, guys with like crazy speed and coverage range, which is still the one drawback on Jack Campbell. And Detroit does a really good job of not asking him to have to play in those challenging coverage assignments. But anything short of requiring like wide range as a coverage defender or having to run with uber athletes man to man, Jack Campbell is phenomenal, man. And as a run defender, he might have an argument up there with like Demario Davis, who's been doing this forever, for who the best run defending linebacker in the NFL is. It's incredible tape, and that's not a huge surprise from what we saw with him coming out of Iowa, man. His ability to get off blocks, to diagnose the run, it's gotten better and better and better, but it was already at a ridiculously high level for a rookie linebacker. His tackling consistency has only gone up and up. 8.7% missed tackle rate his rookie year. 7.4% last year, 7% this year. So just getting better at understanding how to secure those tackles against NFL athletes. And you're seeing it out in space, especially like on screens and dump downs and stuff. He's really made his impact for this team. And even if, I still don't think he has the coverage upside of the game's elite coverage linebackers, he's still useful in the areas of the field that they ask him to cover, which is on those shallow hook zones and to the sideline against running backs and tight ends and stuff. he's still like, he's more than capable in those types of assignments. So Campbell's getting a +4 up to an 84, which definitely places him in with the top 10 linebackers by my ratings. And before the end of the season, might be up into the top 5. I've been really impressed by him. He's been yet another slam dunk pick for Brad Johnson and this front office. But let's shift our focus to the offense on the Lions. So Jahmyr Gibbs going to get a +1 here. Really mostly just off of the Bucs game. There's been some games where he's been more quiet than others this year. And even a lot of his like stats are down. Yards per attempt are down. Yards after contact are down. Missed tackle force rate is like ever so slightly down. I think largely he's been the Jahmyr Gibbs that we know and love. But just, dude, he was so special in that Bucs game, and special in a way that I think he deserves more credit for, showing more power as a runner. Just bouncing off tackles, spinning through the trenches for that touchdown in that Bucs game. We know Jahmyr Gibbs is lightning out in space. That's not changing, but that game was just a little bit of something else. And it's not that he hasn't done that stuff, Lions fans. It's just like he did it at an exceptional level in that game against the Bucs. It's like, all right, he needs a little bit of a bump here with the ratings in regards to like breaking tackles and trucking through defenders and strength and like that kind of stuff. Like he's not just this speed back, right? So he's getting a little bit of love here as he creeps up and up and up towards the game's top-rated running backs. David Montgomery, I'm going to lower him 83 to an 82. I think he's still shown some flashes of good old David Montgomery. That big breakaway run earlier in the season, that was the Ravens game, right? Where he followed his blockers and had that massive, like, full field touchdown. There's still a lot to like there. It's just 83 to an 82 for Montgomery, so nothing to panic about here. But number one, he just doesn't quite pass the eye test to the same extent that I would say we've seen from him here in Detroit as a true impact bruising back. And some of the numbers back that up as well. His missed tackle force rate has dropped from 22% last year down to 14.5% this year. So I think that's probably what you feel. It just feels like he's going down a little bit more. Also had a kind of a sloppy, very costly fumble against the Vikings as well, punched out from Blake Cashman. So I don't want to bang on David Montgomery. He's one of my favorite players to watch, just with the toughness that he's able to run with. But he is coming off that big knee injury from last year. I don't think we've quite seen the same guy, and it's something to monitor the second half of the year. If this is kind of who he is, the rating drop will probably be more severe in the next episode of Studs and Duds. But then taking a look at some of these pass catchers, the rookie third-round pick, the guy that this team spent 3 third-round picks to move up and get, Isaac Tesla. He's going to get a +2, 67 to a 69, which might not sound like much, but the dude's had just 6 targets this year. There hasn't been a huge need to get him super involved with all these other guys to go to. I would be curious if that were to ever change. Like, the upside with him, obviously, with his size, his speed, and the hands that he's shown, making crazy one-handed catches, going all the way back to the preseason, but showing up doing it in the regular season as well. The upside for him as a legitimate outside weapon is totally there. So again, just a +2 on a small sample size here. But I will say, like, I questioned it when they gave 3 third-round picks to go get this guy, because at Arkansas, he didn't really produce. He spent like 5 years in college and never really came along. But Detroit had a vision for this guy, and I know it's not like we're not through the woods yet, and he hasn't like fully broken out yet or been worth the 3 third-round picks quite yet, but my gut tells me like it's going to work with him at some point here on a larger scale, and that Arkansas just had no idea how to use this guy, and that Detroit is just, they are the smartest guy in the room in this situation. So he's been fun in the limited sample size. And then Sam Laporta, the tight end, he's going to go up to an 86. He's clicking back into gear after, a more quiet sophomore season. It's not that he was bad in his second year, but he didn't really follow up the crazy hype he built in that rookie season. I would say he's back to playing at the level he did in that rookie year. where he's at an even better yards per route run. It was 1.77 in that first year, dropped down to 1.56 last year, now up to 1.99 this year. So he's been more involved. That's a big part of that stat, but he's been converting so many of these opportunities as well. He's actually 6 for 6 on contested catch targets down by the red zone. He's already got, he's got 3 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. So that's really stood out. But yeah, he's just been kind of back at that efficiency level that he was in his rookie season as a receiver. And I think the run blocking on him has developed well as well. That's a part of this. That wasn't a strength of him coming out of Iowa or in his rookie season, frankly. It was more about the receiving stuff that he's doing or blocking off the wing. I think bulking up a little bit, like, putting on that NFL grown man strength, if you will. It's shown up in the trenches along with his technique. So he's back on the ups after, I think we actually lowered him ever so slightly last year. But then taking a look at this offensive line, Penei Sewell's continuing to climb here. And I thought about making him the super stud as well. Wanted to give Jack Campbell his love because we've spent so much time talking about Penei Sewell, but it's up to a 96 now for Sewell. That does make him the highest rated offensive lineman by my ratings. Lions fans will be happy about that because we did lower Lane, I think, down to a 94 or 95 in that NFC East episode. But yeah, I mean, there's really not a ton of analysis needed here. I mean, he's insane. He's right there with Trent Williams for the best run blockers that I've ever seen, and pretty much anybody that's seen a lot of football going back into the 90s and stuff would say Trent Williams is made the best run blocking lineman they've ever seen, and I think Sewell is on that level with him. So like he's on this ascension towards really being one of the best players in all of football, not just offensive linemen, climbing up towards that TFG 99 club, if you will. The only reason he's not there yet is he's just a very good pass protector. He's not on that elite level of pass blocking. He's not even quite where like Trent Williams was a couple years ago as a pass blocker. But he's only 25 years old. Like, that can still happen. So Penei Sewell's freaking awesome. He's going up 2 more. And then with these young interior offensive linemen, we got to talk about these guys going up. So Tate Ratledge +3 and Christian Mahogany +2. Both these guys at a 70 rating mark. I view these guys very similar, frankly. They're very similar styles. They clearly, have a brand that they look for with these just badasses in the trenches. And both these guys have been really good run blockers. I think Ratledge has been slightly below Mahogany as a run blocker, but a little bit better as a pass blocker, but they're very close in the sense that both these guys have had their struggles as pass blockers, but have absolutely looked the part as run blockers in this system. So they're both young. Hopefully the pass blocking technique can continue to get cleaned up. They both have the athleticism to do it. I do worry a little bit more about Ratledge just as a taller guard. I saw this in his Georgia tape too. There's just certain matchups where he struggles to get that leverage and guys can get under them on a corkscrew move or a rip move or a bull rush. And he can just struggle at times to stay in front of that and maintain that anchor. So I do worry if the upside is all the way there as a pass blocker for him, but getting off the ball and moving people in the run game, these guys have absolutely been impacts and deserve to go up. But let's talk about the defense a little bit more. So Aiden Hutchinson as well, just one of these superstar draft picks for Detroit, continuing his ascension towards, some of the best players in the NFL. He's getting a +2 up to a 94. Really just continuing to check boxes. Now coming off that injury, definitely deserves to be mentioned with your Comeback Player of the Year award. Deserves to be mentioned as a Defensive Player of the Year award. He's up to 55 pressures, 8 sacks. He's on pace for over 100 pressures, which is funny because he's actually on a slower pace than he was last year, where he was on pace for 145 pressures before the injury. But still, if he can get over 100 pressures, double-digit sacks, that's up there with some of the higher edge rushing seasons we've seen, even including guys like Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, you name it. I mean, he's really been at that level. Absolutely has solidified himself into that tier 1 of edge rushers. Man's just awesome. But he's getting a little bit of help too from especially Al-Qadim Muhammad here has had a career year. I've always liked Al-Qadim Muhammad. He's on his 4th team here in 8 years. He's been one of these just kind of mercenary journeyman like early down edge guys that's really been prominent as a run defender to get you into third down situations. And he's doing that for Detroit for sure. That's a part of this, is he's doing that better than he has in the last couple of years, both here and in Chicago the year before that. But he's kind of like unlocked a gear here at his age 30 season as a pass rusher. He's got 31 pressures and 7 sacks this year. He's had some really dominant moments getting after it, and it's that same kind of style, that heavy-handed power rushing ability, some rip moves, and the energy that he's bringing off the ball. I mean, he's trying to milk everything he can out of his NFL career in the back end here, and it's been impressive. So, like, he gets a +4 here. You know, his resume would tell you that he's going to cool down and not finish the year with 62 pressures and double-digit sacks, which is what he's on pace for right now. But obviously, if he can do that, we might have to have some interesting conversations about him breaking out as like a legitimate number 2 option for this team, which might not sound like too much depending how much you've watched this channel, but that's pretty high territory for me to say a legitimate number 2 guy. Like, he's been that for Detroit this year. So it's a +4 for now. If he keeps up at this pace, he's going to be a massive story by season's end for Detroit here. But then Tyler Lacey, he was a 4th-round pick by the Jags in 2023. One of these tweener defensive ends that wasn't going to be a fit for that new Jags system, but definitely fits this multiple front that Detroit runs. So at 6'4", 285, he plays a little bit of 5-tech, a little bit of 4-eye, kind of that base 3-4 end type of guy. And he's played his role, especially as an early down run defender. He's got 6 defensive stops on 68 run defense snaps. It's pretty dang good. So +3 for him, just as a nice rotational player that deserves some love, along with Roy Lopez as well. He's been a part of that rotation. He's gradually gotten better year after year throughout his career coming out of Arizona. So a +1 for him, up to a 71, just as a early down, space-eating defensive tackle. Then Derek Barnes, the linebacker here, really a fun player. And, you know, I can't rave about Leo Chenal as much as I do. Leo Chenal, one of my overall favorite players in the league, as just this wicked run defender, someone that's kind of built like an edge rusher, but plays more off the ball, but can be used in a 4-3 front as a strong side linebacker, effectively as an edge rusher. Derek Barnes plays that role in this defense. You know, you look at them on paper and you're like, well, they have Anzalone and Jack Campbell. Is Barnes really even a starter? And the answer is yes, he is. I mean, they just use him all over the field. I mentioned those early down on the ball run defensing snaps. They're invaluable for this team, especially when, you know, other than Al-Qadim Muhammad, they don't really have another edge rusher right now that they can trust. But Derek Barnes compensates for a lot of that. Almost exactly half of his snaps, 444 total snaps, 213 of those have been charted as an on-the-ball, effectively an edge linebacker. So he plays that for them, but he also can cover certain matchups. He's gotten better and better in his zone IQ. I think he has even a little more range than someone like Jack Campbell, but he's also a tremendous blitzer as well. He's got 14 pressures on the year. So he's just an incredibly underrated, useful piece. You know, they gave him a decent amount of money last year, and it was a contract that I think kind of flew under the radar a little bit, and then he got banged up. He missed like all of last season, right? Went down earlier in the year and wasn't able to come back. So they're very happy to have him and his presence back, both with the energy he brings, but also the schematic boost that he's able to provide. And then just one player on the back end, frankly. It's been a very injured secondary. I'm not ready to say a lot of these guys have played great. Guys like Rock Ya-Sin and Arthur Maulet, I think it's been about what you expected. But one guy that has stood out is someone that we talked about in the Raiders deep dive, Thomas Harper. He ends up not making the Raiders team, but Detroit picked him up. Harper was undrafted out of Notre Dame, but a good tester, played at Notre Dame. There's a pedigree there, and was good in his time for the Raiders last year. I think he's a player, man. He's got range. He's a little undersized, but he's been tackling extremely efficiently. He actually doesn't have a missed tackle in 3 games played this year. He's got 2 pass breakups. He's allowed just 1 catch on 4 targets into his coverage for 7 yards. It's still a pretty small sample size on Harper for an undrafted guy. He's only played 330 total snaps in his career. about half of those coming this year. But I'm curious, once all these safeties are back healthy and available, if he might make his way into the effective starting rotation for them, because I think what they could do, honestly, is because their cornerback room is so injured and just not that great right now, you very well could take Brian Branch, stick him back into that slot corner role where we know Brian Branch is one of the best safeties in the NFL and the best nickel corner in the NFL. Like, he brings that flexibility, really checking every box in both of those roles. But you could absolutely help your cornerback problems by putting Brian Branch back into the nickel, and then you have a safety room of Thomas Harper and Kirby Joseph. And I'm curious to see if that's the route they want to go, because if I'm Detroit, that's what I would do with that, and then put DJ Reed and Arnold on the outside whenever those guys are able to get healthy, or Meek Robertson, whoever else it might be. But yeah, there's your Detroit Lions. Let's go ahead and talk about the Green Bay Packers. You can feel my tone shift a little bit towards a negative side here, because for their super stud, it was an easy choice, but it's a devastating conversation to have this week. Tucker Kraft was truly emerging as a superstar tight end this season. He gets a +7 in the ratings from a 78 to an 85. Really the heartbeat of this offense. He was run blocking as well as he has in his career as well. So he was helping in that phase too. But just, at all three levels of the passing game, so much of the schemed up stuff early with the check and release stuff, his run after catch ability. He's been as good as any tight end run after the catch this season, and it does go back a little bit to last year too, where you saw the signs of this. But he's been winning tough catches over the middle of the field. He's been getting open up the seam vertically and in the intermediate game. I just don't have enough good things to say about Tucker Kraft. This injury was just so devastating for Green Bay, and I think it's a legitimate hit to their Super Bowl chances this year, because he unlocked so much of the upside for this offense, obviously through the air, but you can't understate what losing a legitimate 3-down, do-it-all tight end like this can have on an offense, especially in this kind of Shanahan-McVay style system that they run. And I'm curious to see what kind of adjustments Matt LaFleur can make now, because without Tucker Kraft out there, I think clearly the best course of action for Green Bay is actually to go with a lot more like spread style attack. Their wide receiver depth is still exceptional. I understand them running a lot of heavy personnel and play action early down stuff and leaning into Tucker Kraft when you have Tucker Kraft, but peeling him out of there, I don't think Luke Musgrave can do what Tucker Kraft does as a blocker. And, are you really going to make John Fitzgerald a big part of this offense? It'll be interesting to track where this offense goes without Kraft, mac and cheese. But let's talk about some of these other guys on the offense. Josh Jacobs, I'm going to lower him. It's on par with like Saquon Barkley got lowered. I think Derrick Henry will probably go down a little bit when we do the Ravens. Some of these three guys, Jacobs, Henry, and Saquon, not that Jacobs was quite on those guys' level, but he wasn't too far behind them. All these guys just haven't been as efficient as last year. And I think with Jacobs, we don't need to spend too much time on this. He's still been very good. I still think the 90 rating mark is accurate for him. But the yards after contact has come down. Last year, he was third in the NFL in yards after contact. This year, he's down to 18th. So just reflecting that a little bit, he's still a very good player. But let's talk about some of these other pass catchers. Fortunately, like, some of these guys are really stepping up. It's not all doom and gloom for Green Bay. Like, Romeo Doubs has really broken out as a legitimate, if nothing else, a legitimate, like, capable, dare I say, even high-end number 2 wide receiver. I think contract year, a lot of pressure on him with them drafting Golden in the first round, who is of a very similar skill set. Like, if anyone in this room was going to come explicitly for Romeo Doubs' targets, his money, and his job and his place here in Green Bay, it was going to be Matthew Golden if you look at the skill set. And Doubs has just essentially held him off. And what you'll notice here today is Golden's rating is not going to change. I thought a lot of him coming out, and I think Golden has absolutely looked the part when they've gone his way. It's been a little frustrating from the fantasy perspective that they haven't gone his way as much, but that's because Romeo Doubs has been so good, and he's clearly Jordan Love's trust guy right now, whether it's a big third down back shoulder or when Jordan Love gets in a pinch. Doubs is the guy he wants to look for more often than not. Like, Love is getting a ton of crap for that pick, that fourth down pick he threw this last week against the Panthers, where he's about to get sacked on a fourth down and nobody's open. He looks for Doubs and just throws it up to him to hope that he can make the play. Now, that might have been Dobbs' worst play of the year because he stepped out of bounds in scramble drill and took himself out of the play and really left Love out to dry on what ended up looking like a hideous attempt at the fourth down there. But anyway, beyond that, like, Doubs has continued to show what he's shown throughout his career as an excellent separator. A very, like, you know, anytime you say the words Davante Adams, you got to be careful. But this is Green Bay, and I think a poor man's Davante Adams in terms of the quick feet for a bigger, you know, not a huge wide receiver, but bigger body, north of 6 feet. Exceptional release package. He has 20 contested catch targets this year. That's tied for 5th in the NFL with, you guessed it, Davante Adams, but behind just Jamar Chase, George Pickens, Chris Olave, and T. Higgins. That's the level of, like, trust he's earned in this offense. And knock on wood, the drops haven't come with him. That's been the biggest frustration. He's been Romeo Drops for his majority of his time in Green Bay. And, you know, he's been a guy that always attacks the ball with firm hands, and you know, you're going to run the risk of higher drops when you are a hands catcher and don't let it get into your chest. It's a big reason why he comes down with a lot of these contested catches is he attacks the football so well. I'm still a little nervous that that's going to regress back to what it's been on his career, but if he's really dialed in and developing those ball skills, it's a big deal. I mean, it could make him something like a number one-ish caliber wide receiver, something in the Stephon Diggs skill set realm. I know, like, it's a big leap from where we're still at with Doubs, but it's been good stuff this year. But it's not just him. Christian Watson also has been a huge green light for Green Bay, and I doubted that this was going to happen, man. Like, he goes down with the ACL injury in the last game of the year last year. With his injury record, I was like, I don't know that he's going to be able to get back in time for the season, and if he does, I don't know if he's going to look particularly healthy. Now, just like we said with the drops on Doubs, you know, knock on wood with Christian Watson staying healthy out here, but man, he looks good, dude, and really for the last, I would say 10 games of Christian Watson's career, if you go back to how he was playing before the injury last year, he's been outstanding. He's obviously this crazy high upside, high second round pick for Green Bay, 6'5", 4.3 speed, like actually can move with twitch and lateral agility. Like, he's not just a Marquez Valdez-Scantling who's stiff as a board. Like, his upside is through the roof, but he's been flooded with injuries and drops and these kind of mental mistakes. That hasn't been the story so much on Watson. He's just been really freaking good. It's just been health as of late. So just a couple games back, it's just 8 targets in the 2 games since he's been back, but he's got 6 receptions for 143 yards, and a lot of those in big spots. He's 3 for 4 on contested catch targets out of those as well. So it's at least, you know, if you're losing Kraft, you're kind of getting Watson back. Hopefully that can stay that way. But, you know, those are the 2 guys, along with more Matthew Golden, honestly. I didn't feel the need to either raise or lower Golden. The production obviously hasn't met the hype, but I think the tape has shown that he can absolutely play. I think these 2 guys, plus Golden, plus Jaden Reed, is going to be back in a couple weeks, it looks like. They still have a ton of guys to throw to, but will Matt LaFleur be less stubborn, open things up, and target these wide receivers at the rate that they frankly deserve to be targeted at this point? So it's not all bad with these pass catchers after losing Kraft. But let's talk a little bit about the offensive line. Darian Kennard, he had to step in earlier in the year. He's played in 5 games, 120 total snaps. Zach Tom went down, and they needed someone to step in. You figured it might be Jordan Morgan or Anthony Belton. But no, it was Darian Kennard really that earned the majority of those snaps, and you can see why he earned it. I mean, the dude was kicking ass out there, especially as a run blocker. Like, okay, I don't like to just throw PFF grades around on this show. I think there's so much more to dive into than that. But he had a PFF run blocking grade in his 120 snaps of 90.1. And if you are in the blue-coated elite territory, north of a 90, you're doing something right. And you absolutely could see it on the tape with him just smashing dudes, using that 320-pound frame. He was a fun prospect coming out of Kentucky in 2022. It's been surprising, frankly, that he's been kind of passed around as much as he's been. Kansas City drafted him in the 5th round, which certainly isn't nothing, especially when it's the Chiefs that take you. They've had some pretty major hits outside of the 1st round with their offensive line, but he ended up in Philadelphia after that, so clearly some pretty smart front offices were interested in Kennard, but he ends up here in Green Bay pretty quietly, who has a lot of depth on the offensive line, and he earns these reps. So I don't think it's nothing here with Kennard. And another suggestion, Matt LaFleur, if you're watching this, don't just open up to a spread offense. I would put him back out there as a heavy 6th offensive lineman. We've seen teams have success with that, but with what he was bringing to the table as a run blocker, have him go out there next to Zach Tom, or maybe even make Zach Tom the tight end and put Kennard in there at tackle. I don't know. It's just an idea. There was definitely a lot there, and the pass blocking wasn't horrible either. Not amazing, but gave up 4 pressures on 66 pass blocking snaps. So that's about 2 pressures a game, averaged out for the average. How many snaps you usually get in a game, but. Yeah, Kennard +2 up to a 66, and then Elton Jenkins is going to come down. He's made this transition to center, and I don't think we've seen quite as good of tape from him as a center as we have as a guard. He's also getting a little bit older. He's not crazy old, but maybe not the high-end athlete that he was earlier in his career. He turns 30 here in a couple months. But yeah, the run blocking for him especially is just not creating a lot of push. I don't know that he's been a perfect pivot point for wide zone. The pass blocking's been okay and better in recent weeks. He's not a bad player. I think 81 is still the right mark for him. I don't know that he's going to fall too much more below that. But this also goes back to last year, too, where he was penalized 10 times, and the run blocking wasn't as good for him. Still a very good player, but I think it was time we knocked him down a touch from the 83 mark, where he was closer to the top-rated interior offensive lineman in the league. He's closer to that next crop, I think, of just quality starting interior players. But that's all I have on the offense. Let's talk some defense for Green Bay. So we're going to start with the interior of the defensive line. Devonte Wyatt's been awesome this year. Unfortunately, he's missed some time, and he goes down week 4 against Dallas, and that was kind of in that run of people like, oh, is the Packers defense really as good as we thought they were to start this season, where they were the best defense in the league for the first 3 weeks? It's more than just Devonte Wyatt, but his departure was a big deal because obviously Parsons is incredible and Gary's been pretty good this year too. But if you don't have the interior pass rush to complement the edge pressure, or if you're taking Micah Parsons to be the interior rusher and the edge group isn't quite as good, the math just isn't the same. But when Wyatt's been out there, he's been a very consistent pressure getter. He's got 17 pressures on just 149 pass rush snaps this year. To be north of 10% for an interior D lineman is very, very good. And he's been pushing the pocket too. So getting him back healthy is a big deal for this defense. He's getting a +1 here. Again, smaller sample size because he's missed a lot of time here. But the former first-round pick is starting to show off a lot of that upside for this team. And then also Colby Wooden, he has flashed. I think he's bulked up a little bit. He was kind of this tweener edge type, played that 3-3-5 edge awkward college role where you don't really know what to do with him coming out. But he's been a true defensive tackle for this team in this system. And he's looked the part, and they run a lot of these slants and run defense games on early downs, just kind of leaning into these guys' athleticisms. He's been an adequate run defender. He's had some flashes as a pass rusher. It's just a +2, 66 to a 68 as a rotational player, but definitely deserves some love. And then the other former first-round pick that has been injured this year but looked awesome when he's been out there, Lucas Van Ness. I really think Van Ness is one of the more misunderstood young players in the league, frankly. I mean, and I'm guilty of this too. Like, anytime you spend the 13th overall pick on a guy, you want to see those early impacts. But he was unique in the sense that he was so raw coming out of Iowa, so kind of new to high-level football, frankly. Not just with his skill set, but even just playing time. Like, he wasn't even a full-time starter at Iowa, but we knew the upside with him was to the roof. But yeah, he's been quiet for the first 2 years of his career, and he's been a rotational player here in Green Bay as well with other veterans ahead of him. But I think he gets discussed as a bust. I'm just not ready to go there with him. He just turned 24 years old. He's the same age as a lot of these guys coming into the league as rookies. He's been great this year. He's got 16 pressures and a couple sacks on just 100 pass rush snaps. The thing that's also not working in his favor is he's missed a lot of time. He's missed the last about month of football. But I really do think this has compounded with Devonte Wyatt being injured at the same time. We saw that fall off from this Packers defense, like weeks 4 through 8, really. Well, go back and watch those first 3 games with Detroit and Washington. Yes, Micah Parsons is wrecking the game, but maximizing on the fact that they're now like guaranteed to get one-on-one looks. Lucas Van Ness, Devonte Wyatt, those guys have been major impacts as well. And additionally, Lucas Van Ness has taken a major leap this year in terms of run support, setting that hard edge with that 6'5", 272-pound frame, the Iowa coaching that leaks into so many of these guys. He's been a huge contributor when he's been able to play for their run defense that has been very good, despite the fact that this is a lighter front. So they got to get him back out there. He's only played 22 snaps since week 4. But if he can get out there and get healthy, I think he can change the narrative very quickly on the idea that he is, been a waste of a draft pick and a bust for Green Bay. I think he's a major asset for them and has been when he's been out there. So +2, some love for him. Hopefully that can be even higher if he can get back out there. But then Quay Walker, another former first-round pick here. Quay has just been steadily getting incrementally better since he came into the league. I don't think he's a superstar, but he's been better with his read keys. You've felt him around the line of scrimmage much more. He's been the captain of this defense. He's had some good moments this year. He's turned into a very serviceable starting caliber linebacker. I still think he's one of the least instinctive linebackers I've ever seen. Like, he can never convert interception opportunities. You don't feel him in the backfield too much, but luckily they have a lot of guys now with like Parsons and Edgerrin Cooper that are more headhunters in the backfield. Quay Walker in that sort of 2 to 4 yard area is a nice kind of next level of defense to have with other guys around him that do some of the stuff that Quay can't do. But yeah, +1 for Quay, up to a 76, respectable ranking for him. I am still curious, though. I thought the Packers might pay Quay Walker before the season started because, number one, the linebacker market is just really low right now. I feel like it's going to spike at some point here, and maybe Quay and his agent are holding out to either hit the market and reset that linebacker market or wait till someone else resets it. That could very well be the case, but they chose not to pick up his 5th-year option, which was going to be about $15 million a year, which is just not. That's just not what Quay has proved to be worth to this stage in his career. Not in studs and duds this week, but Isaiah McDuffie, who they did give a 2-year contract extension, has continued to play really well as their 3rd linebacker and played well last year when Quay was unavailable. It's something that I'm at least fascinated by because I'm not positive that Quay Walker is better than Isaiah McDuffie. It's just, I'm more just talking out loud. I think it's an interesting narrative to track for Green Bay, whose books are certainly a little more flooded these days after giving Micah Parsons 40, basically a second quarterback in there. You might want to cut some corners and make some budgeted decisions like that, especially with like Romeo Doubs playing this well. Do you want to bring Doubs back? or, I don't know if you can bring Dobbs and Quay Walker back. It's something to think about. And that Tucker Kraft contract is a coming. But let's go to the secondary, a secondary that has really had its struggles this year. Now, that's not terribly surprising. I didn't have these guys rated all that high to begin with. But Nate Hobbs has been a serious disappointment for Green Bay. They gave him a solid $11 million a year contract. He just hasn't played good football like he did with the Raiders, frankly. He's struggled to find the football. He's been benched in large parts of the season. He's been penalized 3 times. It just hasn't been good for Nate Hobbs. You're really hoping he can get his confidence back and be the guy that they paid him to be, because, God, they need some help in the secondary. Javon Bullard's going to get a +1 here, +1 up to a 71. He's contributing to their run defense as that nickel corner. That's really where this is going up. The Packers' run defense has been better than I expected it would be. We talked about that after they traded away Kenny Clark. It was like they got to prove that they can stop the run. Bullard has been a big part of that. Now, he hasn't been great as a coverage defender, as have most of these guys not been, but deserves some love for an aspect of the role that he's asked to play. And then Evan Williams, with Bullard being more of that nickel corner, has been this team's starting safety, and he's been a bright spot back there. Likewise, again, mostly as a run defender, but, he's been a really stout tackler from the back end. He certainly hasn't been picked on in coverage, I would say. He's mostly in the right place at the right time. The safeties really aren't the problem for this Packers secondary. It's the cornerback room. So Evan Williams continues to be a good 4th-round pick from Brian Gutekunst here. He's playing like a starting caliber safety. But then with the specialists, Brandon McManus just hasn't been as good as he was last year, especially these last couple of weeks. He has missed 3 field goals in the last 2 weeks. So that's really where this is coming from. He's had a bunch of kicks blocked as well. It's obviously not on him. But yeah, hopefully he can get his swagger back from last year, where he was automatic for this team getting brought in off the street. But Daniel Whalen, the punter, has been really the lone bright spot for the special teams here. He is actually PFF's #1 rated punter in the entire league. Hang time's been great. He's been accurate pinning teams inside the 20, you name it. So he goes up to an 80 on a +3. But let's go to our last team here, the Minnesota Vikings. And for their super stud, it was actually kind of a tough choice. It's been a largely disappointing year for this roster. If this is a roster evaluating series, this season's been a lot more bad than good for this team that, myself and many people said this is one of the best rosters in the league. They haven't played like it to this point. So it's harder to find a super stud award winner here. And there's going to be a decent amount of red that we talk about here for the Vikings, unfortunately, though hopefully we'll be turning a corner here for the second half after they are coming off their biggest game of the year, beating Detroit. But anyway, their super stud award winner is going to be Jalen Redmond. Definitely been, can I say the lone bright spot on this entire roster, at least in terms of players surprising? And he was good last year in limited looks, but he's really been an impact. He's been their best interior D lineman, frankly, through the first half of the year. And it's not like Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave have been useless. They haven't been what they used to be, but they've been okay. But Redmond's been awesome, man. He's got 20 pressures and 4 sacks this season. And that's on 161 pass rush snaps. So he's showing it was an undrafted pickup out of Oklahoma, was it? Right? Yeah, Oklahoma. Just like a totally raw athlete out of the Big 12, or I know SEC now. I can't remember if they were in the SEC in 2022 or not, but same idea. That 3-3-5 hybrid end athlete that just doesn't really know football yet, but he's developed very nicely. Obviously, he's tapping into that athleticism. His get-off is a problem for interior offensive linemen. Redmond wins leverage very quickly and is able to split gaps, both as a rusher and a run defender, but he's also learned how to channel that get-off into a bull rush and a rip move, and it's like, this is good stuff we're seeing from him, man. If he's able to continue this trajectory, he can be, honestly, there's a lot of similarities between him and what Javon Hargrave was in his prime, as not the biggest D tackle, about 6'2", 290 pounds, but he wins in a lot of the same ways, and I don't think it's a coincidence that he's winning with a lot of the same moves as Hargrave, who's in that building with him, and Jonathan Allen for that matter. But I really do see a lot of Javon Hargrave in Redmond especially. But he's been sick, man. Pretty easy choice for this team's super stud. And, for an undrafted player to be climbing up towards, I mean, he's really been one of the more efficient interior D linemen in the entire league this year, strictly based on production and tape. So a lot of love there. And hopefully more to come as he climbs +5 up to a 74. But let's go to the offense here. So JJ McCarthy, it's obviously been a polarizing season for JJ, a very poor start, which wasn't overly surprising given that he came into the year with a 70 rating for me. I certainly thought expectations should have been tempered a little bit. And he wasn't quite ready to start the year. And then he gets hurt. They also had, like, everybody was hurt around him to start the year. It was a lot of nasty, bad conversations about his play and people writing him off and all this stuff. I'm happy we're hopefully like past that era of the JJ McCarthy career arc here, but he kind of gets a fresh start this week against Detroit. And I thought he largely looked, I mean, he definitely looked better, and he largely looked the part. It wasn't all perfect. There was actually a lot of inaccurate missed throws out there. He also got kind of bailed out on a bad pick that got taken off the board. So there's, still a lot of improvement to go with JJ McCarthy, as you would expect. You didn't think he was going to just come back off the injury and go into Detroit and, okay, voila, you've got your franchise quarterback now. But I think the pocket presence was awesome. There's a clutch factor there with JJ McCarthy that you cannot deny. He saved his best throw for last on a beautiful touch back shoulder throw. Made that critical third down throw to Jalen Nailor much more catchable than other quarterbacks might throw that ball. And it was a good catch by Nailor too, but the throw was beautiful. So definitely a lot of boxes checked in his return to the Vikings. Now that he has Jordan Addison and this tackle situation there, that definitely helps compared to what he had to work with earlier in the year. So just a +1 after 1 week. And hopefully when we do this again at the end of the year, we're looking at, a franchise quarterback for the Vikings would be ideal. But not through the woods yet either after a tough start. But we're going to unfortunately have a run of players going down with this Vikings offense especially. Jordan Mason is one of them. And I don't think Jordan Mason's been bad. It's a -2, 80 down to a 78. He's still a very useful player. He's had some good, tough runs and all that. Again, this doesn't make him a useless player, but he has not been nearly as efficient as he was in San Francisco. And getting out of that system, running a lot more just kind of like straight up inside zone here for the Vikings, you've actually seen some pretty questionable vision from Jordan Mason at times. They ran so much outside zone and stuff in San Francisco, and it's not that they don't run that here in Minnesota. He's been good on outside zone when they've ran it, but it's a little bit of a different system. You're seeing him like try to bounce a lot of these inside runs outside quite a lot and leave a lot of meat on the bones of a lot of plays. There's been a lot of negative runs in there, and he's also coughed the ball up 4 times this year between two on the ground and 2 through the air. So the ball security in more of a full-time role has been not ideal for him. So it's a drop for Mason, and it's a drop for Aaron Jones coming back off the injury. He has probably been the most frustrating player to try and rate in whether it's in studs and duds or for my roster or how, for deep dive series, however you want to talk about it, because I do still think a healthy Aaron Jones is a good football player, but he's now 31 years old. We still have him at a good rating, right? 80 after a -3 here, down from an 83. And I don't want to harp on a guy that has just been getting banged up and getting older. But it just, having Aaron Jones rated as an 83 just doesn't feel right to me. And you see him against Detroit this week, and earlier in the game, I think he was fresh and healthy. He gets a breakaway opportunity, and I don't see nearly the same juice that he once had. And it's not like he used to be a speed demon necessarily, but he ended up with a 31-yard run that was a good run, good vision and all that. Again, 80 rating. He's not a bad player, but he could have gotten a lot more than 31. And the defense tracked him down pretty quickly. Like, the breakaway speed didn't really seem to be in there for me. So I don't know. He's a tough one because I love Aaron Jones. but I do think the rating had to come down, and Vikings fans can let me know if that's justified or not. But then Adam Thielen as well, -2 for him. He gets brought in from Carolina, and then they basically forget about him immediately. But he did have opportunities early in the year when Addison was suspended, and just didn't look like Adam Thielen, man. Just the types of tough catches that he always finds a way to make, he wasn't able to make. So we're dinging him for that, and for the fact that he basically just doesn't play anymore. I still think there's something there with the savviness and the high IQ, and I would still trust him to make a tough catch in a pinch, but he does need to get dinged for not doing so when they needed it from him earlier in the year. And then I'm also going to lower TJ Hawkinson. He just hasn't felt like an impact player for Minnesota this year. 29 catches, 233 yards, couple touchdowns, but he's had 3 drops. He's 0 for 2 on contested catch targets. He's got just 2 missed tackles forced after the catch. The lowest yards per route run in his career, the lowest average depth of target in his career. I don't know. It's just a -1. 85 to an 84 is far from a death sentence, but I do think he needed to be lowered. And if he keeps up at this pace as the offense is hopefully turning a corner, then we will have to have some more serious conversations about him, but the beginning of lowering him there. And then the backup tackle, Justin School, -2, 69 to a 67. I think Vikings fans that are seeing Justin School for the first time are like, how the hell was he that high to begin with? Because he was burnt toast out there trying to block one-on-one for this team with these tackle injuries they've been dealing with. He was much better for Tampa Bay last year when he had to step in with some injuries. It hasn't been the case on this team in this system. But then we do have some guys to talk about on the defense, some for better, some for worse. But a couple more interior D linemen are playing well for what they are. Levi Drake Rodriguez, a 7th-round pick, doing some good early down run defense stuff. He also has 8 pressures on the year. They blitz a lot on early downs, and he's been getting after it when he can. So just, eating up some good snaps, innings eater for early down work, if you will. He's playing a good amount, frankly. I mean, he's got 200 snaps on the season, so he gets a +2 up to a 68. It's a respectable mark for what he is. And then Tyrion Ingram Dawkins as well, the 5th-round pick out of Georgia, another hybrid end type in this Brian Flores type of system here. So again, early down work, trying to bring that energy, split some gaps, show up against the run. He had a couple of nice plays, especially week 5 against Cleveland. He got in there for a good sack and a run stop on that in that game as well. Just a +1, 65 to a 66. He was a very raw athlete coming out of Georgia. Hopefully they can continue to mold. But then at linebacker, Eric Wilson, veteran linebacker, very nice player. I thought he looked good in Green Bay. When he had to step in last year, he's looked solid. He's not Blake Cashman. They missed Blake Cashman when he went down. But from a 71 to a 72, Eric Wilson has shown that he's a very capable backup linebacker, which is a position group that it's very hard to find backup linebackers. I think he's got some good value there for the Vikes and anybody else for that matter. But then into the secondary, it hasn't been good, man, especially with these corners. Byron Murphy, honestly, after getting paid, he is having arguably the worst year of his career. At least by reception percentage allowed, he certainly is. He's allowing a 77% reception percentage allowed, and it's not like he's living in the slot either. Like, if you see in the 70s, it's almost always a slot corner where it's a lot of quick, easy completions that are kind of given to the defense. 77% is horrible for a guy that plays the majority of his snaps outside. He's also been penalized 5 times. He has just 2 pass breakups on the season. He's allowed 3 touchdowns. The Vikings need him to kick back into gear, play more like he did last year, not just because they just gave him a new contract. That's going to be a horrible waste of money if he's playing like this, but they need this defense to play much better. And even with the defense playing better against Detroit, Murphy was the one really getting picked on. He had one of his worst games of the year against Detroit. They went right at him, targeted him 9 times for 8 receptions and 100 yards this last week against Detroit. So it's not going well for Byron Murphy. He gets a -2 here from an 80 down to a 78. And then Isaiah Rodgers as well, going to get a -2. he had that amazing defensive player of the week performance against the Bengals, which is one of the better cornerback performances you'll see on the season. Unfortunately, every other week, it's been horrible, dude. The Eagles especially, I mean, I don't know if they win that game if Isaiah Rodgers just has an average cornerback performance. He gave up 150 yards on 5 receptions and a touchdown and the game-winning, game-sealing double move that he bid on against A.J. Brown. Good receivers, but, you know, egregious performance. But he's been picked on, like, outside of that game, too. It really is just the Bengals game. Cornerback's kind of a weird, volatile position, but with Isaiah Rodgers, when just 1 out of your 8 games are any good at all, you know, 1 elite performance and 7 poor performances, frankly, he was okay against Cleveland, I guess. But, yeah, he has to come down as well. And he was going to be kind of a fascinating player to evaluate at this stage in his career as a full-time starter, because he got to kind of live in a, you know, a convenient sort of dime package back for the Eagles. It wasn't a full-time starter for them. He was suspended for the gambling suspension in 2023. So a player I have a lot of respect for that was rated pretty high at a 77. Is certainly not playing up to it now, back into a starting role here. So some issues in the secondary for the Vikings, to say the least. But the last player to talk about here is going to be a kicker. Will Reichard has been just an outstanding draft pick. He was, of all the kickers that, you know, we say don't draft kickers early, of all the kickers that I thought maybe should have been drafted early, I felt like Will Reichard kind of screamed that with the success he had at Alabama. And he's just been money for the Vikings. He's even made some, like, distance kicks that I didn't know he had the leg for as well. So +5, Will Reichard, 75 to an 80. One of the better kickers in football right now. But that's going to do it for our NFC North studs and duds. You guys are going to have to let me know what you thought of the ratings changes this week. Do you agree or disagree strongly with any of the movement we saw here today? Thank you so much for watching. If you have not hit that like button yet, if you could, please do that. I really appreciate it. We are going to do, I think, the AFC North next. So you've got that to look for here in a couple days. Cranking these out as fast as possible. Thank you for your patience as I do so. And thank you for watching. I will see you soon. Peace out.